he built up the hype. Hopefully I can live up to it. But I have a question for everybody here. Have anybody been so excited to go on a job interview before? I want you to raise your hand. You hate your job? I know. Shit sucks. Now picture yourself going to this job interview and having the door slammed in your face over and over and over again. This is what happened to me when I came home in 2013 after serving a 7-year sentence. Every time I went to a job interview, the doors kept shutting over and over and over again. So I'm gonna take you back to where and tell you why I went to prison and how this whole idea of Combody came to fruition. I was born and raised in the Lower East Side, almost next to that ice cream shop, Morgenstern's. It didn't exist back in the day. It's good ice cream though. But yeah, I grew up on that block, and it was a very heavily drug-infested block. My mom immigrated from the Dominican Republic. She was 6 months pregnant with me. So I was an anchor baby. I was born, and as childcare came along, she had nobody to take care of me, and she worked on this small little factory on Bleecker Street, where she would sew, little T-shirts, baby T-shirts for, a few cents per item. And the childcare she provided for me was me sitting under her bench. So I would sit under her bench, just watch her work and struggle. And as a kid, I would ask my mom for things, and she couldn't afford to provide a lot of things. So when I would go to school, people would ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I would tell them I wanted to be rich. Rich I became. I started selling drugs and dealing with the drugs at the age of 11 and 13. And by the age of 19, I was making over $2 million a year and had over 20 people working for me. So I'm going to ask you to take out your notebooks because I'm going to teach you how to sell drugs. But I was hustling right on this corner, and it landed me 7 years, a 7-year sentence. And when I went into prison, that's when I found out I had problems. Doctors told me that I could probably die because of my health issues. They said I probably had 5 years to live because my cholesterol levels were so high and I was pretty overweight, that I could probably die in prison. And doing the math, being sentenced to 5 years to do, I said I was not gonna die in this place. And what they suggested was, you better start eating correctly and exercising. And obviously in prison, you can't eat the best food. So I started exercising. And I went right back to my cell as soon as they told me that. And I started doing jumping jacks, started doing dips on the side of my bed. And it lasted for about 5 minutes, and then I passed out on my bed. And I just kept thinking and reflecting and thinking, most importantly, about my son who was 2 years old at the time. And I said I needed to really get out and see my son. And anybody that has kids, you know how meaningful inside and that feeling you get, that connection is unbreakable. And I woke up the next morning. It was like 6 in the morning, and they call the rec yard at 7 o'clock in the morning. So I went out and I started running the yard. And there was this like SHU, a special housing unit. Whoever watches Orange is the New Black, they explain it. But I didn't want to land in there. And in my 9x6 prison cell here, that's how it looks, but not that dirty. I had my toilet a little bit cleaner. But there was these cell blocks, SHU, and they had these cages. Once you get out of the box, you have this little cage. It's about like this much of a space, and all you do is just walk around. But in the view that you have, you're looking at the population yard. So I'm running the yard, and then you got these guys let out in the cage, and they're screaming at me and calling me Fat Forrest Gump, keep running, Forrest, you can do it. And I was the only person running the prison yard. And I don't know who was the last person to run that yard, but I was running. And it was a time for me to focus and think about myself. And then I started going back to my prison cell and started working out. And eventually I lost 70 pounds in 6 months in a 9x6 prison cell. And this is what you basically see when you go into a job interview. They started talking about ban the box, but I'm gonna get to that a little bit later. But as I started losing weight and kept exercising, kept running in the yard, I caught the attention of one guy. His name was Bus. He was about 300 and something pounds, big black guy. He looked like a bus. And we actually, I was smoking cigarettes at the time, so we smoked a cigarette, not the healthiest option. But I was smoking a cigarette, and he comes towards me, and we start smoking, and he tells me, I want to start running with you. Doesn't know how he didn't see me before anything. And he's like, I want to start running with you. I want to start losing weight. And I told him, yo, I used to look like you. And I showed him my ID. And my ID was like my before and after picture. And my face was like this big in it. And he was like, get the fuck out of here. I'm sorry, I must be the first person. He said, get the fuck out of here. And he was like, that's not you. And I was like, yeah, that was me. And that inspired him to start running with me. And then we helped over 20 inmates who's over 1,000 pounds combined. We started this whole prison-style workout in the yard. And we were going back to our cell units and working out as well. And then afterwards, towards the end of my incarceration, I was about to be released in two months. And I got into some trouble with this officer. This officer basically places me on the wall. They do random searches. They put you on a wall and start searching you. And I'm walking towards the medical unit. This officer places me on the wall, starts touching me, and he starts touching me in inappropriate places. I felt uncomfortable at the time, and I quickly jerked my body. And he said, don't fuck with me. And with a closed fist, he smacked me behind my head, and I fell to the ground. And at the time, I had glasses, and when I went down, I picked up the glasses, and I turned around on him. And as soon as I turned around on him, he thought I was going to react, and he pulled this pin. The pin is this button in this walkie-talkie that they have, and once they press that button, you just need to embrace for impact. So the button was pressed. About a dozen officers come. They beat the crap out of me, left me with bruises and everything, and I end up in solitary confinement. In 24-hour lockdown, you get 2 showers a week, limited food. There was times that they took food away from me for the whole day. And I'm not worried about the shower and the food, but I was most worried about my son because I told him I was coming home in 2 months. And I saw him that week before in the visiting room. And I lied to him. Because of the situation, I ended up doing another year in prison. I was in that cell, and I was devastated, and I didn't know what to do, but all I had and all that was given to me was a paper, pen, and an envelope. And I started writing I wrote a 10-page letter out to my family, letting them know I fucked up, I'm not coming home. You know, I've been in and out of jail since I was 13 and 27, so, you know, I felt like I was a big failure, and I enclosed this letter, and then I realized I didn't have a stamp to send out this letter with. So I was even more devastated. I was banging my head on the wall, didn't know what to do, and then about a week later, my sister writes me, and she finds out I was in solitary, and my sister's like Mother Teresa's child. Hallelujah, amen, all the way, everything. And she tells me in this letter to read Psalm 91 from the Bible. I also had this Bible. All they give you is this religious item, any religious item that you have in your property, they give it to you. So she gave me this Bible when I was in Rikers Island, never opened it up. It was sitting in my cell collecting dust. And they gave it to me. And as soon as I started reading that letter, I was like, fuck that, I don't believe in God, and that's just BS, and I threw it in the corner of my cell. Didn't want to hear anything about religion. But sitting in my cell for another 24 hours with nothing to do, there's no AC, no fan. It was in the middle of summer. It was about 105 degrees in that cell. I decided to pick up the Bible. And when I picked up the Bible, I turned to pages in Psalm 91, and as soon as I started reading Psalm 91, a stamp fell out of my Bible. And it was a stamp that I needed to send out this 10-page letter out to my family with. As soon as that happened, chills run down through my spine every time I say this and tell this and share this story. And I'm not pushing religion or anything to you, but this is what happened to me. And when that happened to me, I felt like there was something bigger than myself. Something bigger than myself, and I felt regret for the first time. I started reading the Bible from front to back, and I started realizing what I was doing to my community, to my friends, to my family was extremely wrong. And then I started realizing that all the people that I sold drugs to, I was really affecting them, and I started thinking about their families as well, and I felt like I was creating this whole web of destruction. And I started praying for the first time, and I told God, how can I get back to society? How can I repay my debts? And this is where Combody came. Combody was born out of that prison cell. And I felt like I was already helping these inmates in the yard, working out, and I was like, this is what I want to do when I go home. So using the side of my Bible, these long sheets of file paper, I started drawing out lines, and I wrote everything I really wanted to do every second of the day when I first came home, and actually followed that whole plan. And I was released from prison a year later, and I was sent back to Rivington Street, the bougie place where mortgage students is. But my mom has a rent control apartment in there since the 80s. She's lucky, so don't be jealous. She dealt with that, $700 a month for 2-bedroom. But I slept in her couch. And it was a very uncomfortable couch. Motivated me to move. And every day I would wake up in the morning and I would follow that regiment that I wrote down in that prison cell. And I started doing these workouts in the park. And I started, the way I built the drug business was I changed the way we sold drugs. I made 10,000 business cards. We had flip phones at the time. I had everybody in my team wear suits. We went and made a whole delivery service. So this time when I went out to the park, I wore workout gear and I changed my target market and I started going after girls with yoga pants. And I started pitching them my 10, 15-second pitch. I was going up to guys coming out of the gym and telling them about a prison-style boot camp. I actually went on the F train multiple times and said, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want your money, I just want you to hear me out. And I would share my story in the train station. And here's where the hustle started. And I started doing it in the park, renting out studios. And then eventually I opened up Combody in the exact same corner where I was selling drugs at. I didn't mean to land right back on the block, but it came to a full circle, and it was the only place that accepted ex-con to open up a shop in the Lower East Side. And it came right back, and it's this dirty old basement, and I said, this is perfect. The toilet was broken, and we built it to look like a prison. We built it to look like a prison because I was tired of people judging me, and I wanted people to come in and know what they were gonna get into. So I built this place primarily because I was working at an internship, and I was working at this internship, and after work, I would come home, I would go to the studios, and I would call our classes Coss Athletics. That was the name of the brand. It was not Combody yet. And our tagline was prison-style boot camp. But the font was about 8 font, and the Coss Athletics was about 40. So you really couldn't see it, but before I started classes, every time I would explain people my story sometimes, and I was getting like females from ClassPass, and they didn't know what Coss Athletics was. They just thought it was a workout, and I want to try it. So I would tell my story, and there was one a few times, but there was one specific time that it was very embarrassing, and I told my story, and this lady was looking at me crazy, and I was like, "Don't worry, I only did 6 years in prison." And I went to give her a high five, and she said, "Don't touch me. I don't want nothing to do with this." And she walked away from class. In the beginning of the class, there was about 25 people waiting to work out. And it was really extremely embarrassing, and it just made me realize that there's people still out there discriminating against formerly incarcerated individuals. So that's why I built it, you know. So when people come into a prison, they know what they're gonna fucking get into. But what we've done is create a team, and our whole mission is to hire as many formerly incarcerated individuals as possible to teach our fitness classes. And this was my first employee, Sultan Malik, who served 14 years in prison and 7 years in solitary confinement. 7 years in solitary confinement. He told me he learned how to speak with a British accent in solitary confinement. At least he entertained himself. But I met him through my internship. So I was working at Goodwill Industries, and nobody knew I was a ex-con or formerly incarcerated individual. And I'm sitting there and I'm helping people with their resumes, and Sultan comes up to me and tells me, I want a resume done. I just came home about 2 months ago. I did 14 years, and I've been training a couple girls in the park already. Can you tailor my resume to look like a personal trainer? And I was like, you should come check out what I'm doing after work. So I handed him my card. He came through, and we just quickly clicked. And he came at the right time because I couldn't fit any more people in this 400 square foot studio where I was fitting about 20 people like sardines in a can. And he started expanding, and we opened up 2 studios simultaneously, and we was running classes simultaneously on each side. And then now he's our senior trainer, vice president. I gave him a small percentage of the company, but he's been featured in every media outlet. We've been featured in Vogue, CNN, you name it. It's been blowing up, and that. He's not the only one that's been transformed by this. Now we have 16 employees, 12 that have been formerly incarcerated, so I don't discriminate. And it's just been an amazing experience to go from nothing to something. And I felt like the secret is just showing up and delivering a great product and showing up day after day, just like I sold drugs on the street corner, and I showed up day after day on that corner with a great product, and people bought. But people started asking me, how am I gonna take this to the next level? How am I gonna scale this when there's so many people, that's being incarcerated? We have 5% of the world's population with 25% of the world's prison population. So 25% of all inmates in the world are here in the United States. And people started asking me, how are you gonna fix this problem? It's huge. How are you gonna do it with just one studio? Are you gonna open up another studio? So what we did, we came up with an innovative idea. We came up with ConBody Live. So you could virtually work out with a formerly incarcerated individual for $5 a month. So you basically have different workouts, different ex-cons. So all you need is your body weight, your 9x6 prison cell space in your small apartment, and your favorite ex-con to get you that prison body you always desired. Since we launched this October, we've gotten over 4,000 people on our platform. We've had about 20 different countries of people on it now, and it's only $5 a month. And then I got really lucky. I spoke at the wellness event that he mentioned, and at that wellness event, it's called Founder Made. I told the exact same story. I told this, and there was a lady that came up to me, and she was like, I want to help you. I want to help you. You know, how can I help you? And I'm like, I don't know. She was like, she was like, can I get your card? And I was like, I don't do cards. I send out emails. I start conversation right away. So I sent out her email, and she responded with Saks Opportunity. And I was like, Saks? What the fuck is Saks? And then she was like, I'm in charge of this wellness space at Saks Fifth Avenue that we're planning to open up. So last week, we opened up ConBody in Saks Fifth Avenue. It's crazy. So we have a prison inside Saks now. I came out of their offices, and I walked about 50 blocks, and I almost cried, because 4 years ago, I was sitting in a prison cell not knowing what my life was going to turn into, and now I'm in Saks, and it's crazy. And they said if it goes really well, they potentially want us in all 47 locations across the country. This is a 6-month trial, so if you could support us, I know you want to work out. So if you could support us in any sort of way, and I'm a strong believer, if you don't ask, you don't eat. So I'm gonna ask everybody to take out their phones right now, because I'm gonna take your money. No, I'm just kidding. You got a phone? You don't got a phone? Okay, you hiding it. All right. So I want you to, I know there's bad service here. You might not get connection. But I want you to click on that app called Instagram, and I just want you to follow ConBody. Maybe I will appear in your feed, and it'll inspire you to come. And if you have a corporate company or a group of people that want to come to prison at Saks, please support us. Reach out to me. You know, hit us up on a DM, because it's always going down in the DM. But I really appreciate the opportunity to speak here. PSFK, thank you. And I really appreciate everybody here for all your attention. Thank you.